supposed to submit it, maybe for marking. Still, I will be able to send another assignment that we can be able to maybe submit via this portal. So after this, we'll be able to create a quiz that we will do so that now we can submit immediately. And it's recorded. So please, you do it after we complete on this. So we were looking at the control structures. And one of the control structure that we said we have is what you call the sequence control structure. The next one is what you call the selection. And then we end what you call the looping. So for a recap, maybe you can tell me different clauses that are used on
You are
selection
currently the only
control
person in this
structures.
conference.
Which are these clauses that are mostly used on a selection control structure? Or which are these loops that we are supposed to use, or statement that we are supposed to use in a sequence control structure? So can I get an answer from that? So Rachel, I think you are left alone. Rachel and Felix. So Rachel, are you there? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? So are we in the same page? So can I continue? Okay, so I can continue. Please, it's good we will not be taking time. So when you're responding, can you use maybe the slightest possible time that we can use so that we cannot waste time, please? So I'm asking a question. If you look at the control structure, we have three types of control structure. We have sequence, we have selection, and the next one that we have is what we call iteration. So I'm asking a question. Which are the loops, or maybe which are the statements are we supposed to use in iteration control structure? Which are these in iteration control structure? So can I get an answer, please, Rachel? Can I get an answer? So can I get an answer? Or maybe if you are not communicating together, maybe we can postpone the class. So let us not take time for this, because now we are supposed to take 80 minutes. That is 1 hour. So we can talk. So please, Rachel, can you use your mic? Use your mic, please. So I'm asking a question. The statement that you can use on a looping control structure, and I have seen that you have used what you call if else. If else is not one of them, because when you look at most of the control, So you can't hear me. What is the issue? What is the issue? Is it because I'm not clear, or what is the issue, please? Felix, can you hear me? So can we talk instead of typing? If you can talk, can we use speakers? Can you use microphones? Felix, can you hear me? Okay. So what I'm saying is that we was looking at the control structures. So if your microphone is not enabled, you can still enable it on your side. You can enable it on your side. Just click on that mic. Felix, I think I can hear your background now.
Yes, yes.
You hear? Okay, now Felix is okay. Rachel, can you hear me, please? Rachel, you can use your mic still. So I'm asking a question. Maybe Felix, you can assist on this because I have gotten an answer from Rachel. I was asking a question. What are these statements that you can find on looping control structure? Because that was the last point that we discussed last week. So I can give you the first one. The first one is a while loop. You can use while loop.
And you can do while loop.
Yes.
And for loop.
Yes, then you have for loop. So
yes.
First of all, you must be able to clarify them where you can find them. Don't mix them with other control structures. Because if you look at a sequence, we said that one doesn't use any statement. It follows a systematic way of writing program from top to bottom. Where we cannot start by giving an output where you have not indicated the variables that we have. So you start from top to bottom, structured way. But if you look at the next one, we said we have what you call the sequence or indexation control structure. And indexation control structure, we said this is where we look at a point where you have if else, if, and what you call the switch statement. But when you look at now the iteration are the ones that we have already talked about. Do while loop, and for loop. So please, can you first of all understand the syntax when you are using them? Because we must follow the syntax when you are writing them. And maybe I'm expecting maybe after this class, we can now go back. Maybe we do a quiz. You first of all maybe examine ourselves on what we have gotten. So today I wanted us to start on arrays. And I have sent note on your portal. And when you talk about an array, is a group of elements that has the same name and has the same type. Has the same name and has the same type. Now, I want to use, maybe I can use a paint. I can use paint. Well, in this case, I want first of all to define these variables. Let me use paint together with the PowerPoint. Together with the PowerPoint. Sorry. So if you look at now in arrays, we are saying these are groups of elements. So array are group of elements that has the same name and the same type. So when I talk about the same name, when I talk about students, we refer to many students, but they have the same presentations. Maybe you are doing course, you are having a name, you are having a registration number, you are having the maybe the unit that you're supposed to do. But if you look at your friend, is doing the same unit or different units. So these are of the same group. If I look at hands of kettle, I cannot mix student with the hands of kettle. So that's why we are saying they have the same name and the same type. So when you talk about the same type, we are referring types as integer, int, character. Maybe we can have double. Maybe we can have a float. So meaning, if we are now presenting some elements, and we are presenting this element as a character, we cannot represent a character and we say some of the elements that are on a student name are also represented as a double. You present as a character, you present a character. You cannot change those presentations. That is why, in this case, we can say there are two types of arrays. So if I look at these notes that I have here, we always look at arrays in two ways, because array is a structure. And when you look at array, we always say that array is composed of one dimension, and the next one is what you call multiple dimension, or sometimes we call it two-level dimensions. Two-level dimensions. So this is the next one that we say it is also called fixed array. And the moment we talk about now these arrays, what are the advantages? One, utilize less memory. So this becomes now the advantage. Utilize less memory. Because when you now group these elements as the same, now you are now reducing the memory utilization. Then the next one, there is what you call speed in execution. So we are improving speed in execution. So if you can improve speed, you less the memory utilization, now you can be able to execute more data within that execution. So in this case, if you look at our main presentation that you always have, maybe if I can use a PowerPoint, I start with a fixed array. So when I'm using a fixed array, we are saying we are having a memory, and this is a memory that is now presented because you have done operating system, so you know what is a memory, and this memory is divided into section. This memory is divided into section. So when you talk about fixed array, when I say int a, when I say int a, so I'm saying this is a. So this now is given, the whole of this array, the frame of this array is given as a. So in this case, we can say the first point is represented with an index 0, the second one in an index 1, the second one, that one 2, and the next one 3. So what we can say is that an index, we can say an index is always presented as the array size minus 1. The array size minus 1. When you talk about array size, we are saying if you have, maybe we declare int a, and this a, we say a is equals to 4, because we are assigning that. Now we automatically assign this value. So the moment we are now defining array, we don't assign. What we do, we use the type. So this is the syntax, type, then array name, then we use this angle bracket. We use angle bracket. And this angle bracket that we are using, we are saying, if the first one we are using int, we have now students. How many students we have? We have 4 students. Then we end semicolon. So this now results to what you call a fixed array. This is what we are calling to as a fixed array. And in this case, at least now you can be able to see whatever we are trying to have within this array, we are now presenting for student. And the first student has to be presented with 0. The second one, 1. The second, 2. The third one, 3. Because if you try to count these, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, let us now look at the memory interpretation. Let me try to use this, the whole of this. And maybe I use another right somewhere here. So if I'm trying to do, and maybe I copy that. If I am presenting an array, I can represent the first array as int student, maybe 0. Then the next one, int student, then we have 1. Until you go to the third element. Until you go to the third element, where we have int student, we have 3. And then we end semicolon. Maybe we can still include the next one. So we are having now 2 here. So if you try to count these, we are having 0, 1, 2, and 3. Now, meaning, what is now the functions of an array? Function of an array is to group elements together, to utilize less memory, and to speed up in the execution. And when you are utilizing a memory, instead of declaring a student 1, 2, 3, up to 3, maybe 1, 2, 3, up to 4, now I can use only one statement and I represent these 3 students at once. So that is what you call a fixed array. And in this case, that's why we are saying, if we can now say that we are assigning array, and we are assigning this fixed array, we always say that we have int, maybe we have students or student. Remember here I've used students, so I need to use student. Then I use 4, then is equal to, I open with a curly brace. How many items do student 1 have? 23. The next one is 4, the next one 7, the next one 88. On that, then we close that, then we end semicolon. So what we are saying is that we can assign this first memory and we assign 23. We assign the second memory and we assign 4. We assign the third memory and this memory we assign 7. And the last memory we assign 8 that we have. So that is now when you are talking about initializing a memory or initializing an array. And when we initialize this array, we are saying these elements are not supposed to change. They are not supposed to change. So if I have the memory like this, I can now say I have the memory interpretation for this. And now we can give various index. So this is 0, this is 1, this is 2, and the next one is 3. So we are now assigning here, if I look at this element that I have here, I'm assigning 23, 4, so 23, 4, 7, and 8, 8. 7 and 8, 8. So it means if you try to map this element, they are supposed to look like this. These elements are supposed to look like this. So we are having an element of 0, element of 1, element of 2, element of 3, element of 4, etc. Going like that. And that is now when you are talking about a single dimension array or one dimension array. And that's why we are saying there is a collection of data items or similar data types. And I think for now we understand what is data type, because now These are type of memory allocation that can be used in the memory. Then when you look at that, we have said we have single dimension, or sometimes we call it fixed, or we can call it one dimension. We can still call it one dimension. Then we have multi-dimension, where we have many representation, of which now we need first of all to work with this array. Let's first of all work with the first array. And I want to come up with a program. Maybe we can say, in this case, maybe we can say what? Write a program. Let me write it somewhere here. Maybe write a program in C that calculates the sum max of four students. So that is the program that you are supposed to write. And this program, now you need to first of all ask yourself, right? How many variables do you have? Or how can you define variables? So if you look at this, we are calculating sum. So we can say variables are, so you can say the first one is sum, and the next one is max. And this max should be as a form of an array. Why are you using array? We are using array because we have 4 students, and we cannot say enter student 1 max, enter student 2 max, enter student 3 max, enter student 4 max, enter student 10 max, etc., which now you'll be able to use more memory, where now you reduce the speed of execution. So for this case, I'm now using an array to represent 4 students because they are of the same group. So in this case, we can start with our header hash include. Then we start with standard input.h. Then we have main. Then after that, we can open that. Then we open the statement. Then we declare this. Maybe I can declare int max. But these max are arrays. Now, I want to explain something here. And mostly, we always look at that when you are assigning. If I try to come here and leave this empty the way it is, it means the compiler will go through the statements. Then it finds that there is an empty statement here. Then it goes to the assigned elements. Now, when it looks at the assigned element, it looks at the assignment element and you find that there are 4 assigned elements. So these 4 assigned elements, it will now map it here. So automatically. So the way I declare, if I declare this one, the way I have declared it here, or I declare it the way I have declared it here, it is still the same. We don't have any hiccups on that. So that's why I'm saying, even now I'm assigning, there is no need of even entering the value. But because I'm not assigning, I now need to enter these values. I need to enter. But let us first of all assume we have already been given these marks. And the first one that we have been given is 45. The second one is 56. The next one is 57. And the next one is 56 again. So those are 4 elements that we are having because these are elements. When I say 4 here, those are elements. So for this case, I need now to calculate the sum of these marks. But how will I add the first one, the second one, the third one, and the fourth one? So when I'm adding these, that's why I need to introduce sum. And I say sum is equals to sum plus. Why am I saying sum plus? Because automatically the sum is 0. So we are adding 0 plus whatever is given. But now, for this case, you must now counter for each and every element. So it's like you are saying sum is equals to 45 plus 56 etc. But for this case, when you're using an array, we need to reduce the memory completely, an utilization of the memory, and we need to improve the speed in execution. So we can now allow this person to use a loop because we are looping. We are moving from the first one to the second, to the third one, to the fourth one. So you can say, maybe I have a loop called R. And I say for, I said when you're using an array, always use a for loop. R is equals to 0. So we can assign, so we are assuming that there is 0, 1, 2, 3. So R is less than 4. When I say R is less than 4, we are talking about 0, 1, 2, 3. So we have element, 3 elements, because 4 is not included. Then we have R plus plus. So I think up to now, you know why am I using R plus plus? Because we are moving from the first one to the last one. You're not moving from top to bottom. So for this case, we can now look at this explanation, and we say, most of these elements that we are having here, now we can calculate the sum. So then we say sum is equals to sum plus max. Remember, we are using max. Max into what? So we are looking max into R, because R is the one that is countering the elements. This is R0, R1, R2, R3. So the moment you calculate that, now you can close that. Then you open. So the moment I close this, I'm saying, can you first of all calculate the sum? Don't give me sum for each and every element that you enter. If I enter the first one is 45, maybe I calculate the sum for the first one. No, calculate all the sum, then you display. So that is when you display printf, then you display and you say the sum. Maybe you can say the sum is equals to percentage D. Remember, we are using integer. We are using integer. Percentage D is that. Then we have a comma. Then we have sum. Sum. Then we close that with a semicolon. Then we return what? So I can try to reduce the size for this. I hope you can see that size. So then we return 0, 0. Then we close the main. We close the main. So what we are saying is that, can we have an array called max, array name called max, but this max should hold how many elements? 4 elements. So if I can use a pointer, I can use a paint. I'm saying we are having this element 1, 2, and then we have 3. So this is presented as 0, 1, 2, 3. Where the first element is presented as what? 45, 56. 45, 56. Then the next one that we have is 67, 56. 67, 56. So if I go back to this, it's like I'm assigning those values here. So I'm assigning those values here. But now I will not be using student, I will be using what? Max. Now in this case, at least now you can be able to understand we are having different presentation of these elements, but they are fixed, they cannot change in a given point. They cannot change in that time. Are we understanding? So can we have a question from there? Okay, maybe Onyango, can you, Joseph? Okay. Ask a question.
Mwalimu nilikuwa nauliza.
Yes.
Inaitwaje? Nini sum hiyo sum yenye umekaa hapo sijakuwa declared hapo kama nini, kama integer as a variable.
Oh, let me see. Oh, okay. I'm sorry for that. So you declare that. You declare sum there. Thank you, Joseph. That one, you need to declare a variable that you are using. So any variable that you are using, you can declare that. Suppose I want to calculate an average. Remember, I can calculate an average for these, and you find that sometimes you not have whole numbers. You can have maybe use a what? A float if I'm using an average, yeah? Because when you calculate an average, you divide by 4, sometimes you'll be having a decimal point. So thank you for that, Joseph. Is there any question? Anybody with a question, please? Minor Grace, do you have a question? Peter, you have joined as the last student. Do you have any question? Joseph, you have a question?
Yes, Mwalimu, I have another one.
Yes.
Ni for instance tutaki kutumia array, nini mtu sanza tumia character?
Yes, you can use a character, and in most cases it's when you're talking about strings element. Maybe I'm talking about names of students. So when I'm using names of student, I cannot use an integer. So I will declare as char names. Char names. But how many elements of names do we need to have? So in that case, we can say char names. So there's two means. The name that you enter should not exceed 2 characters. So if the one is red, if your one is red, it is supposed to execute RE. It is supposed to execute RE. So you can use arrays in names when you now define as a string, and still you can use it in integers. So we allow that. We allow that. We allow that. Is that okay? Joseph?
Yes.
Okay. So hoping now you have programmer, you have software that can create programs. Maybe at your own time, you can create that program and you see how it will run. I have an issue with my memory of my computer, but I will reinstall that application again so that next time still we can be able to code that program and be able to execute the program. So do you have any question from other members? Call Madut, do you have any question? Edan, do you have any question? Felix, Minor,
No
Peter,
question.
Yes, Felix?
No question.
Okay. So can I proceed? So if you look at these notes that I have given you, mostly what we are saying is that the array has some characteristics. And the characteristics that you have talked about is they share names. They share names. So when I'm talking about student, talk about student. Don't use maybe staffs or any other name. Items can be of a simple data type as character. So I think, Joseph, now I have still answered that question. So you can see that we can use as a character, float, integer, or double. Individual element accessed using an integer index. I think that is clear. I can still explain that. We use an integer value. And if you look at this program that I have already created here, doing away with this first, I'm using an integer value called R, an integer variable called R that is supposed to counter numbers from 0 to 3 according to my statement. So we use R. The moment you are using a loop, anywhere you are using a loop, even if it is a decision control structure, never declare that variable that you use inside a loop as double or as float. Declare it as an integer. And never ever end a loop with a semicolon. Always we said we end a do while loop. When you use a do while loop, that is when we end with a semicolon at the end of while. So in this case, that's why we are saying whose values range from 0 to the value of array size. The value of array size is positive 32,000. And that is too large to be used. So in this case, I think I have explained this. Illustration examples, this is an array. But now I want to ask a question. If you look at this array that we have here, and I think everybody can see this array. Can you see this array? Is there anybody who cannot see that array that I have highlighted? Anybody who cannot see this array that I have highlighted, please? Now, how many elements do we have? Count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 elements. Out of these elements, 22 is presented in index 0, index 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's why we are saying index is given as size minus 1. Then we have another one. This one is presenting characters. And that's why we have the name occurs. So O, K, O, T, H. So you have character O, you have character K, O again, T and H. So this now is a character presentation of an array. So in this case, when you're declaring array, I think I have talked about declaring an array because this is a recap on that. We have said you use array type, array name, then we have the maximum size, int C that. If it is a character, we use char, maybe message 20. So this static means it is not supposed to change, of which now we don't use it when you are declaring in these simple arrays, these simple data types. We don't use it. The same case when you're using a float, we can still declare that. And that's why we have still said we have two types of arrays. One type of an array is one-dimensional array that requires a single index and resembles a single list of values and therefore requires a single index to vary between 0 to array size minus 1. So that's why we have said we have an index that is referring to that. So that becomes our end of one-dimensional array. If there is a question, please, before we proceed to two-dimensional array, maybe I can clarify on that. So I want to clarify if there is a question on one-dimension array. So I will be sending some questions. You try. There is those past papers that I gave you. Please try with those question papers. There are many. And I think I have been receiving some questions from Joseph. And maybe I answered one. Did it work, Joseph? Did it work?
Yes.
Okay. So please, if you have a question, I'm free. Don't mind about time. You can send an SMS for that. I will still answer if I'm awake. So is there any question on one-dimensional array? Yes, Joseph?
No question.
Okay, no question. So call Madut. So I can go to call Madut. Do you have any question? So please, you can maybe say yes or no if you don't have a question. If you have a question, you say yes. If you don't have a question, maybe we can say proceed, or you say no, we don't have. Okay. Tarek, do you have a question? Okay. Mine agrees. Peter. So I think Onyango has said. Then we have Rachel. Rachel, do you have a question? Okay, so I'm around now to proceed to two-dimensional array. And for today, we will go up to two-dimensional arrays, which ends to our end of a presentation for arrays. But let us first of all start with the definition of a two-dimensional array. And we have said one-dimensional array is when you're talking about fixed dimensions. Sorry. fixed dimensions. But in a two-dimensional array is when you are saying there is a separate pair. So it's like now, I want to present this multi-dimension, but I will start with two-dimensional array. Multi-dimension is when you have more than three arrays in it. Two-dimension, you have two. Like now, here we have one. If you look at here, we have one. But if I want to have two, I can use that. If I want to use three, I can use that. So here I will be talking about maybe two. Here I will be talking about maybe four. Here I will be talking about maybe five. So in this presentation, this is a multi-dimension. But for our case, we will be talking about a two-dimensional array. And that is the one that I need to explain now. And for this case that we have here, we are saying in a multi-dimension, a separate pair of square bracket is required for each subscript. Thus, a two-dimensional array will require two pairs of brackets. A three-dimensional array will require three pairs of square brackets. And I think I have explained that. But if you look at a two-dimensional array, because it's the one that you need to work with it, we are having two square brackets. One is for the first one, and the next one for the second one. Meaning, the first one is for rows, and the next one is for columns. So in this case, we can say, if I am using student marks, maybe I can say int marks, then we have 2, maybe we have 4. So in this case, we are saying, like we are saying int marks, we have rows, we have columns. We have rows and then we have columns. Meaning, how many rows do we have? Now, if I can insert a table here, if I am using 2, 4, maybe I can insert, we are having 2 rows. Let me use it down here. We are using 2 rows, 4 columns. 2 rows, 4 columns. So I have 2 rows, 4 columns. So the first row is presented as 0 row, 0 column. The second one is presented as 0 row, first column. Remember, we are using index. 0 row, second column. 0 row, third column. And for this one, we are having now 1 row, 0 column. 1 column. Then we have 1, 2 column. Then we have 1, 3 column. So in this case, we are presenting a multidimensional array. A multidimensional array. Meaning, if I have some values here, and I assign these values. So I'm supposed to assign the first one. So you open the curly brace, and then we close that curly brace. Then we open for the first row. We open for the first row. How many elements we have? Maybe the first one is 23. The second one is 4. The third one is 5. The next one is 6. Then I close that row. Then comma. I open the next row, which is second row. Maybe I have 34. I have 5. I have 7. I have 9. Then I close that. So in this case, what we are saying is that we have the first row and the second row. But in the first row, we have 4 columns. And in the second row, we have 4 columns. So if I want to assign values here, I will be able to assign these values as 23, this one as 4, maybe this one as 5, and this one as 6. The other one as 34, the other one as 5, the other one as 7, the other one as 9. So these are now arrays that you are supposed to have, or the array elements that you are supposed to have in those memory. But right now we are creating a memory, and this memory we are defining a variable for each, and the variable is what you call max, but this max we are giving it some elements with a representation of rows and columns. That's why if you come back to these notes that we are having here, we are saying the syntax of declaration of an array is type, array name, then the way we have declared it here. The way we have declared it here. This is the syntax. So we say this is the syntax. So in this case, the arrays that are provided here, we have 50, 50, 24, 80. Now, I want somebody to interpret for me, how many rows do we have? How many rows do we have in this array? And how many columns do we have in that array? How many rows do we have in that array? And how many columns do we have in this array, which is presented as a character? So somebody can interpret that, please. Somebody can interpret that. So how many rows do we have on that array that I have already defined? That is the array that I'm talking about, that I have sent a message to you. How many arrays do we have? Now, how can you interpret that code?
We have
Yes, Grace?
we have 24 rows and 80 columns.
Yes, we have 24 rows and 80 columns, where we have now defined a character called the page. So we have defined a character called the page. So for this case, that's why we are saying in a two-dimensional array, you have always to present rows and columns in that. Now, I want us to maybe have a certain program that defines an array somewhere. If we are not having it here, maybe I can have my own program that we can try to come up with. Okay, let me maybe have a program, and I want to write it. Maybe I can use a new slide. So write a program. Write a program that calculates the max that calculates the sum of 4 units done by 4 students. Done by 4 students. So in this case, there's a general explanation. Write a program that calculates the sum of 4 units done by 4 students. So in this case, we can say maybe we are defining max. And in this case, we are saying we have 4, then we have 4. Meaning, there are 4 units that are done by 4 students. So this 4 can represent, or maybe here we can change so that we can understand. Maybe we say 3. So I can say here 3. I can say 3. So we are having we are having 3 students who are doing 4 units. 3 students doing 4 units. 3 students doing 4 units. Now, how will I define this? So I know you know how to define a structure of a C. And when you are defining a structure of a C, we start with hash include. I will not start from there. So for this case, I will now have two loops, one for row, and the next one for column. Then I can have for sum. I say for row is equal 0, row is less than 3, row plus plus. Remember, I must open that, but these 4 students, these 3 students that we are having here, they are doing 4 units. So we say 4 columns is equals to 0, column is less than 4, column plus plus. Then we open that. So we are saying, let's have 3 students doing 4 units. Then we calculate the sum for these 3 students doing these 4 units. Now, in this case, if somebody tells you now to come up with an array, this person is telling you to maybe present something like this. Maybe I can use a text box somewhere. Maybe I should not violate whatever it's here. So I can use this. So I say, we are now inserting how many rows do you want to insert? So we can insert a table. We have 3. Okay, let me use it the way it is. 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. So something like that. Maybe we can clear this so that we can have a clear table. So for this case, we are saying this is the first row, the second row, and the third row. Now, can you calculate now the student marks? Can you calculate the student marks for these 4 units? 4 units. So it is like 4 times 3. We are calculating now for 12 entries. 12 entries. So for this case, now you need to calculate the sum. So sum is equals to sum plus max into R into C. And when we say max into R into C, these are the rows, 3, and columns, these are 4. Then we close this. So when you close that, now we have closed the first outer loop. We close the inner loop. We close the outer loop. We have closed the inner loop. We close the outer loop. And then we can return 0, 0. And then we close the main program. So in this case, now if I enter the first one as 34, the next one as 2, the next one as 12, You have any question? So up to that point, do you have any question before we proceed? Joseph? Any question? Any question?
Connection problem, mwalimu. I can't see anything.
Okay. So the question was, let me share the screen. So what I was saying, if you are presenting an array, you either present that in a two-dimensional array. And the moment you present it in a two-dimensional array, we are assuming that maybe we are writing a program that calculates the sum of 4 units done by 3 students, if I use that simple interpretation. So in this case, we are saying, let us declare sum, a max, 3, 4. So we have 3 rows, 4 columns. So out of these 3 rows and 4 columns that we are having, now we can now define that in a table form. So we can use table representation. And that's why I have said, now we are having 3 rows, but 4 columns. But how will you write a program? The way we can write a program is by the use of 4, we declare rows and columns. And that's why we are saying rows are the outer loop. Rows now becomes the outer loop, but columns now becomes the inner loop. And the moment we are using the outer loop, now outer loop controls the inner loop. So when the inner loop is controlled, it allows you to calculate the sum by using this presentation. And the way we have said is that when you're using sum is equals to sum plus max into R into C, we are saying currently max is 0. Currently max is 0. So it is 0 plus the max for these 3 rows and 4 columns. And that is the way that we have already presented this. Now, the question is, how will you know that the first memory is supposed to be given as the first value? So if now we assume we have already assigned the values, and these were the values that we are assigning because I had already given you the assignation, the way we assign. So we are assigning that before, comma, then we have 2, comma, we have 12, comma, then we have 34. Then we close that. We open that. We have 56. We open this, 56. Then we have 67. Then we have 88. Then we have 44. We close that. Then we have a comma. Then we open another one. We have 66, comma, we have 77. We have another 77. And we have another one, 22. We close that and we close the whole loop. So for this case, these are now the elements, the way they are supposed to be assigned in a memory. And because here we are not entering them, that's why we have not used this. That's why we have used the assignation. Suppose we are not entering these arrays, and we are still using the same array. Suppose we are not assigning, we are entering them. So in this case, we can say, this is now the interpretation, but for our case, we are not assigning, we are entering them. So for this case, we can start with 4, R is equal to 0, R is less than 3, R plus plus. Then we open that, then we say 4, column is equal 0, column is less than 4, column plus plus. Then you open that. So in this case, we need to enter. So that's why we say maybe print F, enter array, enter arrays. And maybe we can use a new line. We can use a new line. Then we close that. Then we have scanf. Then we have percentage p. Remember, we are using it as an integer. Then we enter that. We say max into r into column. And we can use that. So for this case, we have already entered these marks. Now we can now maybe calculate the sum, and now we have to introduce sum is equal to that, and then we close. So if you want a programmer maybe to first of all enter the values without calculating the sum, we can close that, and then we say sum is equals, but this one now introduces to us, first of all, you close this. That's why I'm saying we are not supposed to close that, just include sum inside. So sum is equals to sum plus max into r into columns. And that is the end. Then remember here we are supposed to display to calculate the sum. Then we say print f outside the inner loop, print f sum is equals to percentage d, maybe sum. Then we close that. Then we can close the other one. Then we return 0, 0, and then we can close that. So in this case, what we are saying is that we are writing a program, and this program is allowing an entry of different execution of these programs using rows and columns. Are we together now? Are we together? Is that clear now, Joseph?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody with a
Yes.
question up to that point? Anybody with a question? Others, I think I cannot hear your response. So please, can you raise an issue on that? If you have an issue, can you ask? Either type by typing or maybe by use of okay. Any question? So you can either type, wave. If you're using video, you can wave. Any question? Can I proceed? So if you come back to notes, so what we are saying is the same way we declared a one-dimensional array is the same way we are declaring a two-dimensional array. And I think I have given some of the programs here. One of the program is supposed to, it is having 5 rows and 2 columns. I don't know whether we have a question, but I can assume that now we are now displaying. This is now just displaying the arrays, displaying the array. We are displaying the array if you're using that program. The other one is using 5 rows, 2 columns still. And now, if you look at this program, it's the one that now introduces to us what you call searching techniques. But before we go to searching techniques, the next lesson will be pointers. There will be pointers, and we can use pointers. We can use arrays in pointers, and it assists us maybe to come up with a clear presentation of which address is pointing the other, and that is the next class that we will be discussing. That is next week. Do you have any question up to that point? Is there any question? Joseph?
Mwalimu, niko na moja.
Yes.
Mwalimu, nauliza
Yes.
kama nini character sinakula 1 byte.
Yes.
Mwalimu, si unanisikia?
Yes, nakusikia.
Nilikuwa nauliza kama nini character inakula 1 byte.
Yes.
Nasema character inakula 1 byte.
Yeah, inakula 1 byte. Yes, it has 1 byte.
Na nini array inakula 2 bytes, si ndio?
Yes. So that's why we are saying,
nini array inakula 2 bytes. Kwa nini programa basi sasitumie ni character sana?
Kwa nini asitumie nini? So if you look at that, when
Mwalimu, nini inaitwa hii nini character sana si kushinda array.
I've not heard your question. The last question. Why is the programmer using characters? Joseph?
Ndio nilikuwa nauliza.
Yes.
Nini arrays a lot nini rather than nilikuwa nauliza mbona programmers so napenda kutumia array sana nini rather than nini character.
Other than characters. Now it depends. Because in most cases when you use
kwa nini na nini inaitwa characters inakula space kidogo si kushinda.
Okay, let me ask. I have heard your question. So the moment you are using characters, we are using 1 byte. Like now we have there is a question on how many characters do we have on a student name, and it was, I think, Tom. Maybe we can use Tom. So if you are talking about T is the first character, and that character is the one that you are saying it takes 1 byte. The other one takes the next byte. The next one takes the next byte. Now, in most cases, we use other types like integers, double. There are 2 ways why we use them. One, it is because you want to work with values. That is why we use those characters, those doubles, float, etc. But the next thing, when you're using character, it doesn't exhaust all elements that we present within the memory. That's why we don't use character mostly. One, because it is not presented as a value. If you're not presenting it as a value, and we don't frequently use characters. Like now, when you display using name, you only display it once, but we frequently work with the values. But the moment when we are talking about characters, sometimes we are only presenting a single character, like this one, T, we are presenting then O. So this one is given its own memory. This one is given its own memory. This one is given its own memory. So if you look at this, we are having 4 bytes, 3 bytes. So out of these 3 bytes, they accommodate more memory, irrespective of what we have explained here, rather than using 8, which is supposed to be allocated in one section of the memory. So this one is located in different section of the memory, but this one is located in one section of the memory. So it's like now we are saying, if I insert a table here, so it's like we are saying, we allocate here 8. So we can allocate 8 here. So let me clear the table so that you can see. So here we allocate 8 values, where 8 values, maybe you can have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up to 8. But if you're using character, now, if these characters are 3, now it means you have to present, maybe I insert table, but I'm inserting with 3. So the first one, when I clear this, So the first one that I'm having is T. The next one that I'm having is O. And the next one is M. So you can see now, this one is taking 1 byte, but now this 1 byte, it is now using a very large memory. So that's why it is not frequently used. The next one, it's because now, maybe we are using a value that we cannot use it at that time. Have I answered that question? Joseph, report there. So can you reach at that point? So I want us to go back to our portal, and there are some questions that I want you to do, and I will set them as quizzes. Those are still testable. Remember, at the end of each and every topic, you're supposed to do a quiz. And then after you do a quiz, that quiz will be submitted to NEC examiners. So make sure that you attempt all the questions that I post at every moment. Because when you fail, your scores will go down. So instead of improving your score. So it's good for the quizzes that I want to set at this time, you tackle them and you answer them, because there are few questions that I want us to tackle on that. Is there anybody with a question up to that point so that we can proceed? So those quizzes I have already set, so you can go directly to those quizzes and you start doing them. You start doing them, and I will still be marking them. Then we can go to chat. Maybe if you have an issue, we can chat. Is there any question up to that point? Can I proceed? Can we proceed to quizzes? Can we proceed to quizzes? Madut, I'm asking, can we go to quizzes? Edan? Tarix?
Yeah, proceed.
So we can proceed. So let us go and do those quizzes. Then after that, we can, I will still create a chat room that we can maybe communicate. Thank you for that. Let's meet in the next lesson that we'll be discussing on pointers. And next class, maybe I will suggest we will do a card. And that card will be a pirate card. We will call it a pirate card. So please avail yourself. Tell your friends to come and do that card. Thank you.